fire roads are supposed to make the wilderness safer. They're simple clearings, dirt lanes cut through forests so rangers can reach wildfires, rescue hikers, and move equipment. They exist for order, for access, for emergencies. But on certain fire roads across the country, rangers report something else using them. Shadow figures. Not silhouettes. Not tricks of the light. Figures. Figures that walk the roads at night with impossible stillness or impossible speed. Figures that don't cast shadows back. Figures that stand in the center of the road and watch you approach, then vanish the moment your headlights blink. Figures that mimic human movement just closely enough that your brain tries to convince you they're people, even when every instinct in your body is telling you they aren't. These are the stories rangers don't tell the public. Not because they're embarrassed, but because no one knows what these things are, only where they show up, what they seem to want, and what happens when you stop your vehicle and get out. Tonight, we're going into those stories. The ones rangers only tell each other. The ones whispered on long drives. The ones that happened on fire roads. Ranger Marcus Ortega never believed in phenomena. 20 years in national parks had carved him into someone impossible to startle. He'd seen injured bears, lightning strikes, overturned vehicles, hikers who thought a granola bar counted as food for 3 days. Nothing rattled him. Until Fire Road 27. It started on a windless August night. Ortega had been dispatched to check on an illegal campfire report, routine work. As he turned onto Fire Road 27, the dust rose behind him in slow curls, illuminated by the headlights. The world felt unnaturally still, like the forest was holding its breath. Fire Road 27 wasn't dramatic. No canyon drops, no exposed ridges. Just a narrow dirt lane cutting through lodgepole and fir, with reflective posts every quarter mile, and a shallow ditch on the right that liked to swallow careless tires. Ortega had driven it 100 times, mostly half asleep, mostly bored. That night he was wide awake. Half a mile in, the figure appeared. A silhouette standing in the center of the road. Not moving. Not stepping aside. Just standing. At first, his brain did what brains always do. It tried to solve the problem with the easiest answer. Hiker. Lost camper. Teen sneaking out after dark. Ranger service. Ortega called through the roll-down window. Step off the road so I can pass! The figure didn't respond. He tapped the horn. Short burst. Still nothing. He slowed to a crawl, letting his headlights press into the shape. The figure didn't flinch, didn't shift weight. Didn't do anything a body does when it's been caught in light. Only after Ortega reached for the spotlight did he feel the shift, the stomach-dropping instinct every veteran ranger recognized. Something was wrong. He swept the spotlight toward the figure. The beam passed over the road, the trees, the gravel, and the figure vanished. Not turned, not ran. Vanished between frames of light. Ortega stopped hard enough that loose gears slid on the passenger seat. For a few seconds he didn't move. He just listened. No footsteps running into brush. No branch snap. No breath. The road was empty. He stepped out slowly, boots crunching on the gravel. The air had that damp resin smell of late summer, but underneath it was another note he couldn't place, something thin and metallic, like old coins left in rain. He walked to where the figure had stood. The gravel there was pressed down in the precise shape of feet, not animal prints, not tire tracks. Human feet. Bare. Ortega crouched, the way he'd crouched beside 1,000 trail signs and fire rings, and placed his hand an inch above the compressed footprints. Then yanked it back. The air above the impressions was freezing. A thin layer of frost had formed on the rocks, on a night when the temperature was 65 degrees. He radioed it in. "Dispatch, you sure you're not seeing a hiker?" "Ortega, hiker doesn't freeze the ground." There was a pause, that old dispatch silence, where the person on the other end acknowledges they don't know what to say. Dispatch finally, "Copy, log it. Continue patrol if safe." Ortega got back in, started rolling again, trying to fit what he'd seen into an equipment issue or a trick of angles. But the deeper he drove, the less the forest felt like forest. The headlights stopped catching wildlife shine. No owls. No rodents skittering over the road. Even the bugs had gone quiet. It was like something in the trees was listening. A quarter-mile later, the figure appeared again. Same posture. Same centerline. Same refusal to react. This time, Ortega didn't speak. He didn't honk. He just drove closer, slower, willing the shape to resolve into a person. At 50 yards, the figure tilted its head. A small gesture. Human enough to spike his pulse. Ortega flicked on the spotlight. Gone. Another quarter-mile. Again. Always ahead. Always in the road. Always gone the instant he tried to look too hard. By the time he reached the turnaround near mile marker 3, his odometer said he'd driven 2 miles since the first sighting. But the time in the truck felt longer, stretched, heavy. On the drive back, the figure appeared one last time, closer than before, no more than 20 yards ahead, then disappeared without spotlight or warning, as if it had simply stepped sideways out of existence. Ortega never found a campsite. The illegal fire report was closed as unfounded. But he never drove Fire Road 27 alone again. In his private notebook, kept at home, not in the station, he wrote one sentence. It wasn't blocking the road, it was holding the place. The next story came from Ranger Colleen Jensen, working in Sequoia National Forest. Jensen drove Fire Road 9 almost every night for 5 summers. She knew every washboard dip, every culvert, every dead snag that leaned over the shoulder like a crooked finger. She liked Fire Road 9 because it was predictable. But wildfire season of 2016 turned predictable into something else. It started with sounds. She'd stop to clear debris, fallen branches, loose scree, and while her engine idled, she'd hear footsteps behind her vehicle. Not approaching. Not wandering. Pacing. Slow, even, like someone measuring distance with their stride. The first time she thought bear. Second time she thought a prank by trail crew. The third time she realized the pacing always began after she turned the engine off. She kept her hand on the door, froze. Listened. 1, 2, 3 steps. Pause. 1, 2, 3. The rhythm was too clean for an animal. She angled her mirror down. Nothing there. She stepped out, shining her flashlight around. Silence. Her light hit trees, brush, the iridescent curve of a banana slug. No movement, no eye shine, the road behind her filled with drifting dust and tailpipe haze. She got back in, and that's when she saw it. Just beyond the brake lights, at the edge of the illumination. A tall shape. Human height. Human outline. But wrong. Too thin. Too still. Arms straight down. Head tilted slightly, as if considering her. She felt her throat go dry in that instant way fear comes, without permission. "Base, I've got a possible lost hiker," she radioed, voice steady because rangers are trained to keep it steady even when their bodies are screaming. She opened the door again, and the figure slid backwards into the darkness. Not stepped. Slid. Like someone dragging a cutout across shadow. no footfall, no brush disturbance. Just the shape being removed from light. She froze. The figure froze with her. The forest air went cold enough she could see her breath. She shut the door, reversed a full quarter-mile without taking her eyes off the mirror, then turned around and drove out. She wrote the report as possible visual illusion and tried to sleep. The next morning, maintenance found 5 deep parallel gouges down the full length of the tailgate. As if something with enormous reach had dragged its fingers across the metal. There were no tracks, no prints, but the gouges were deep. Too deep for any animal in that forest. Jensen measured them. 4 inches apart, straight as if done with a ruler. Starting high on the left and ending low on the right, as if whatever did it had leaned down to look in. Her supervisor told her to take the truck to the motor pool and file a wildlife incident form. She nodded. Then she went home and washed the dust out of her hair for almost an hour, because she couldn't shake the feeling something had been close enough to touch the vehicle without touching the ground. In the years after, Jensen said the road felt different to her at night. Not haunted, not cursed, occupied. Like she was driving through someone else's hallway. This next encounter happened in 2019. A trail crew in Utah set up motion cameras along a fire road that had been experiencing interference. Batteries drained overnight. Cameras shut themselves off. Entire SD cards wiped. Except one camera. The one the Rangers kept unofficially. No backup, no timestamp logs, nothing the park could confiscate. The footage has never been released. But Rangers share the description the way people share a wound they don't want reopened. The camera faced a long, straight stretch of fire road, no traffic, no trail intersections, a perfect controlled view. 8:42 p.m. An empty road. Wind in sage, a mule deer crosses left to right. 8:43 p.m. A shadow appears in the center of the lane. No sound. No footsteps. Just there. Not emerging from brush. Not walking into frame. Existing. 8:44 p.m. A second shadow joins it. This one arrives from the left shoulder. But arrives is the wrong word. It doesn't step. It doesn't sway. It simply slides into position beside the first, like a chess piece being moved. Both humanoid. Both perfectly still. 8:45 p.m. A third figure appears. Except this one appears wrong. Too short. Head tilted backwards at an impossible angle, chin aimed at the sky, posture like a marionette dropped from a hand. At this point, the trail crew expected movement. Something, anything normal. None came. 8:46 p.m. All 3 turned toward the camera simultaneously. Not slowly. Not with a human lag. They turn at once, in the exact same fraction of a second. Like one decision through 3 bodies. The footage shakes, like the camera flinches, even though cameras don't do that. The crew replayed that part a dozen times. The lens shivered without wind. The tree holding the camera didn't flex. It was as if something in the air had leaned toward it. 8:47 p.m. Static fills the screen. Not the normal digital artifacting. Full static, like a channel being drowned. 8:48 p.m. When the image returns, the shadows are gone. But something else is recorded. A whisper. Right next to the microphone. Turn your lights off. Even though no one was within 2 miles of the camera that night. The crew never put that camera back up. Not because they were told to stop. There was no official order. They just didn't want to be the reason the road learned where to look next. Why do fire roads attract them? Veterans share a theory, but only to each other. Shadow figures don't appear on ridges. They don't linger in campgrounds or popular trails. They appear only where human and wilderness intersect violently. Fire roads, carved scars, human intrusion, forced openings through old growth that didn't ask to be opened. From a distance, they're practical. From the ground, they feel wrong. Even in daylight, fire roads don't belong to the forest. They're too straight, too exposed. Their gravel is a different color. Their ditches too clean. Their clear cuts too abrupt. They are a line of human intention running through something that doesn't care what we intended. According to one ranger, every fire road feels like a wound, and something walks in the wounds. Another said, "They don't follow you home. They don't cross into town. They stay on the roads built to fight nature, like they're guarding something." And Ranger Webb, after his third sighting, said something that keeps younger rangers awake at night. They don't appear because they're lost. They appear because you're on the road. They're watching us use it, and I don't think they want us there. The oldest rangers make a darker point. Fire roads aren't just access routes. They're the places you go when something is already wrong. You drive them during lightning storms, wind events, red flag days, when the air is dry and brittle and primed for flame, when the forest is under pressure. And when a landscape is under pressure, it changes. Trees groan. Animals vanish. A whole ecosystem tightens like a fist. Rangers say that's when shadow figures feel closest. Not like they're hunting. Like they're waiting for the wilderness to go back to being theirs. The road that nobody finishes. There's one fire road rangers refuse to name. Not publicly. Not internally. Some won't speak its number out loud. They call it the Dead Mile. Not because anyone died. Because nobody reaches the end. The Dead Mile is ordinary in the way all terrifying places are ordinary at first. Just a one-lane service road tucked behind a locked gate. Gravel shoulders. A mile marker that looks like any other. Every ranger who's driven it reports the exact same thing. They reach the 1 mile marker. The road bends. The trees shift subtly, and something stands in the center of the path. Not a shape at the edge. Not between trunks. Straight in the lane. Dead center. As if it had been waiting for your headlights to arrive. Then, static on the radio. Engine stuttering. Temperature dropping. Wind reversing direction. The first time it happened, the ranger involved said the windshield fogged from the outside in, not condensation, not breath. The glass went milky like a cold hand had pressed against it. He wiped it. The fog returned. He looked past it, and the figure was closer. Not walking. Approaching by being nearer. Every ranger turns around. Every ranger says the same thing. When you see the shadow standing in the dead center of the road, the forest goes quiet, too quiet. The moment you stop your truck, you know you're about to see something you won't come back from. No one has driven past that figure. Not once. Not ever. And that's the part that sits like a stone in the gut. Because rangers are trained to push through fear, they walk into smoke. They walk into storms. They walk into caves and ravines and places any normal person would avoid. But when it comes to the Dead Mile, fear isn't the deciding factor. Recognition is. That instant where every ranger, regardless of background, culture, faith, or skepticism, sees the figure and understands the same thing. This road has something on it that does not want you to learn what's past the bend. The rule rangers don't put in writing. Near the end of the season, rookie rangers always ask the same question. What do I do if I see a person standing on a fire road at night? The veterans give the same answer. If you can see their face, approach. If you can't, drive away. because anything without a face doesn't belong on a road built by people. A beat of silence. And if the figure follows your truck, don't stop. Don't speak. And whatever you do, don't shine a spotlight at it. Figures that can stand in headlights shouldn't be allowed to see you more clearly. Then the final rule, the one no one ever writes down. If something's standing on a fire road at night and it doesn't move when you honk, you're not looking at something alive. Fire roads exist for emergencies. But sometimes the emergency isn't fire. Sometimes it's the quiet thing waiting in the cut we made through the forest. The thing that only shows itself once the last daylight is gone. The thing that stands in the center line and doesn't step aside. Because to it, we're the ones trespassing. And if you ever find yourself on a fire road at night and your headlights catch a figure that doesn't cast a shadow back, don't argue with your instincts. Don't get out. Don't try to make sense of it. Just keep driving. Because some roads were built to fight the wilderness. And some nights, the wilderness walks them back.